One of the cons of being an engineer is the fact that the stress never really goes away. When you go to industry, the stress is still there, but it's a different type of a stress. We're going to go into all these details as well as the pros and cons, more cons about being an engineer. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Alex Isidro, and here I share engineering career content. So if you like this video, make sure that you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. It'll really help me out, and it'll also spread this information to more young engineers like yourselves. And what I'm going to be sharing here in this video with you, it's going to be based on my perspective, from my experience being exposed to a variety of different fields. By the end of this video, you are going to know what really takes place in the engineering industry. So let's start with the cons first. As I was mentioning a little earlier, the stress that you go through when you are in engineering school, it doesn't stop once you get to industry, and you're not going to be working for quote unquote for free. When you go to industry, you're still going to go through the stress levels. But I want to say that the stress is actually good, because when there's no stress, I've been in both situations. When there's no stress whatsoever, when there's no deadlines, you kind of go at your own pace. That type of work, although in the beginning can be very relieving, if you have no urgency, if there's no deadlines, if you don't have a little bit of a stress that actually pushes you to do things, then the work itself actually becomes kind of not fulfilling, not satisfying, kind of boring at times. So I'm being on both sides of the fence, and trust me, you do want a little bit of a stress. The one thing that I want to say here as well is that I've talked to other engineers who experience very, very, very high amounts of stress. A couple of months ago, I was talking to a civil engineer, and my friend, she was telling me that the stress that she experienced when she was in the company where she worked, it was so much that actually pushed her to quit her job and go somewhere else.
2.5 years. And what made you leave?
Honestly, great company. I learned a lot from them. I love the experience that I had from them. Yeah. But coming out of college, they kind of expected you to work crazy hours, and yeah. I was working 70+ hours every week. I was working a lot of weekends. It just wasn't. Maybe it was because I worked at headquarters and I didn't work at a satellite office. Like I've spoken to people who do work at the satellite offices, and they did not have the same experience I had.
So my point here is that there's going to be a spectrum, right? It's not always going to be always stressful. And if you do get to a field where there's always a ton of a stress that you can't even withstand anymore, then what is most likely going to happen is that you're just going to switch. Okay, so the second con of being an engineer is that you may have to move to where the jobs are. And when you move to a new area, when you move to a new city, or if it's an area that is remote, it can be something that works against you, and it can be a negative. Why am I saying this? When you go to a remote area, when there's fewer people, it's less populated than a city per se, like Los Angeles or Washington, D.C., that affects your career, it affects your exposure, it may affect your personal life if you're looking to date and you go somewhere where there really isn't that many people. So in turn, it all affects your future. I'm not saying that this is going to be the case for every single engineering field, but I want to say, based on my experience and based on what I've seen in the last 10 years, I think this can be more likely for chemical engineers, aerospace engineers that have to go to where the companies that need their talent are. Chemical engineers that are in the oil and gas industry or the manufacturing industry. So that's just an example. And the reason I'm saying this as well is because I used to work in a headquarters. I used to work in a very, very large organization. And a lot of the people from all over the country wanted to come to headquarters, depending on what you want. If you wanted to advance your career, they wanted to be in headquarters because not only the pay was higher because of the Washington, D.C. area, but also because if you join headquarters, you would be exposed to all these high-ranking executives and officials, which in turn helped people advance their career. In contrast, if you were in remote areas when there really wasn't like a small location where there really weren't that many people, then the chances of you advancing your career were going to be less. I wouldn't say less, but harder, because you weren't exposed to people that could actually help you out and streamline the process of you growing. So this is very, very important, because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and move somewhere that is completely remote and then people just completely forget about you. The third con for being an engineer is the fact that when you go through engineering school, it's very, very technical, and it is for a reason. And by technical, I mean that you focus on calculations, you focus on numbers, you focus on data, you focus on reports, and for a good reason, right? You can't possibly learn everything that you need to learn in engineering school. However, one of the downsides and one of the weaknesses of engineering school in general is that your soft skills may be underdeveloped once you join industry. I've shared here in the channel plenty of times, and it's just something that gets repeated over and over to college graduates, especially engineering students. It's your soft skills that are going to help you advance your career and move up within the company because you are working with people. So it's a con for engineers. You have no idea how many engineers are extremely smart. They're very data driven. They know exactly what they're talking about. But when it comes to soft skills, they don't know how to deal with others. They don't know how to present their solutions. They don't know how to present the process that they are going through in their head. And as a result, it can be frustrating for their audience and the people that they talk to whenever they are trying to present a solution. So if you want to work on your soft skills, I have plenty of videos that I'm going to link in the description where I teach you how to present yourself, how to give presentations, how to assert yourself in the workforce, how to be more confident as a young engineer. And I'm going to link in all the description so you can learn more about what I'm talking about. Okay, and the last con that I'm going to share here in this video is the fact that not all work is fulfilling or satisfying. That's definitely a con of being an engineer, especially in the beginning, because ironically, when you are in engineering school, you have all these big dreams. You want to change the world, and you want to be innovative, and you want to be focusing on design, and you want to help. You want to be part of something big. And I completely understand where you're coming from. I know that I wanted to do that. And what happens once you join industry is that you are helping other people. You go through this learning curve of observing, watching others, learning from other people, asking questions. But what happens as a result of you always just watching and learning is that you may feel a little underutilized. You may feel like you're wasting your time. You may feel that you could be doing more. But just keep in mind that it's just a matter of time until you develop your skills more, people get to know you, and the more people get to know you and the more you develop yourself, then the more people are going to want to give you more responsibilities. And before you know it, after a couple of years, you're going to be leading big projects. And at that point, you're going to find the work much, much more fulfilling. Okay, so now let's actually focus on the positive things. Forget about the negatives. And the first pro of being an engineer is the fact that it has a relatively low unemployment. I was looking at some data from the National Science Board, the Science and Engineering Indicators, and it basically says that unemployment rates among scientists and engineers tend to be lower than the rates for the labor force as a whole. An estimated 2.7% of scientists and engineers were unemployed compared to 4.9% of the entire U.S. labor force in February 2017. And it keeps going, and it says workers in science and engineering occupations have historically experienced lower annual unemployment rates than the overall labor force. So that right there lets us know that engineers have relatively low unemployment. Now, of course, they're not unemployment proof. It doesn't mean that engineers are not going to have a hard time finding jobs. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be competitive. It doesn't mean that you will never get laid off. But generally speaking, if you major in engineering and you're an engineer, you're going to have a higher probability of you getting jobs due to the versatility and the analytical skills that you develop in engineering school. The second pro of being an engineer is the fact that it's evergreen and adaptable. And that's because when you become an engineer, not only do you focus on the innovation, on the design portion, you also focus on the optimization, the maintenance. And that is a cycle that it just keeps repeating. If you build a turbine today, in the next couple of years, you're going to grab the same turbine and you're going to try to optimize it. You're going to try to make it better. You're going to have better models. You're going to have better material. You're going to have better performance. You're trying to increase the efficiency of a lot of mechanical systems or software that you're developing nowadays. The skills of an engineer are always going to be needed, not only to make something new, but also to optimize it, make it better, and not only that, but also even to maintain it. Another pro of being an engineer is the fact that it has potential for growth. And by potential for growth, I mean that not only you're not limited to only being focused on technical work. You're not limited to only being focused on calculations, design, maintenance, optimization. You have the potential to go rank on the business side and actually go and make a career for yourself as an engineering director, or if you want to become a chief executive officer in some company. So you're not limited to just be an engineer with 20 years of experience in the technical field, but you have the versatility to also grow in leadership and high ranking executive positions as an engineer. The fourth pro of being an engineer is that it is exciting and satisfying work. And I know I did mention a little bit earlier that one of the cons is that it can be a little unfulfilling in the beginning, especially because you are only learning. But as you go along, as you progress, you're going to find projects and opportunities that are a lot more exciting than when you first started. Now, the fifth pro of being an engineer is the fact that it's a prestigious occupation. A couple of years ago, when I just graduated college, I signed up for my insurance and went through my primary care physician. The first time we met, we were introducing ourselves, and he asked me what I did for a living. And I told him that I was an engineer, I had just graduated, and so forth. And he immediately reacted and told me, wow, really, you're an engineer? That's crazy. Like, that's a lot of hard work. That's something that I could have never done. And keep in mind, he is a doctor, one of the most reputable, one of the most prestigious careers that exist in the world. And he's telling an engineer, hey, that's a lot of respect. So it's prestigious occupation. If you ask anyone, if you tell anyone out there that you're an engineer, unconsciously people are going to give you a little bit more respect than they wouldn't have otherwise if they didn't know you were an engineer. Of course, they're not going to tell you this. I know that I go through it. If somebody tells me that he or she is a doctor, immediately my respect and admiration for the level of hard work, the level of discipline that he or she went through, immediately makes you respect them a little more than you wouldn't have otherwise, just because you know how much hard work, how much discipline goes into obtaining such degree. Now, the other pro of being an engineer is the fact that you develop discipline, resilience, mental toughness, organizational skills, time management. And I know that if you are going through engineering school right now, you may be thinking, wow, I don't think I am, but trust me, the more you go through the hard grinding work of engineering school, you are going to notice that at the end of the tunnel, you're going to be much better off when it comes to discipline, mental toughness, because imagine all the failures that you went through, all the obstacles that went your way, all the stress that you were able to withstand throughout engineering school, the time management skills that you developed. And you may not think that you're that great at time management, but trust me, in order to balance all the obstacles and all the tests and all the projects that you go through when you're in engineering school, your time management is naturally going to develop. And that actually helps you not only just for a career, but also, of course, for your life. Now, another pro of being an engineer, and this is one of the most important ones, of course, also great pay. For me specifically, it lifted me up socioeconomically. Keep in mind that the median income in the United States is approximately 70,000 median household income, and for the engineering median income is 91,000. So I know that this is just a very, very general amount, a general number, but I know tons of engineers who make a lot more money. I even heard of engineers who reach high-ranking positions in one of those tech companies like Facebook and Apple and things like that. They earn 300, 400, 500,000, but it just goes to show that the engineers can earn a very, very good income. It's not going to make you rich, but if you are good at managing your money, if you spend less than what you make, and you are good at making investments, or maybe you want to invest in a business, you want to invest in a company, you want to open your startup, you have the skills already to use your engineering salary and your income as capital to start investing in whatever other projects you have for yourself. So the bottom line here is that all careers have downsides, and engineering is not any different. However, I generally think that the pros outweigh the cons. And hey, when you graduate as an engineer, your skills were needed yesterday, they're needed today, they're needed in the future for research, design, maintenance, innovation, optimization. So currently, for the foreseeable future, I think that engineering is here to stay. It's one of the few majors that are still worth attending college for. We will always need engineers to apply scientific concepts, innovate new technology, make it better, contribute to progress in society, helping humans solve problems, and overall contributing to a better world. So with all that being said, if you want to know more about my entry level, my background, my mechanical engineering experience, go watch this video right here where I tell you everything that you need to know. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace!